Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. You know that phrase, good fences make good neighbors? Well, let me tell you, no fence in the world could have protected me from the neighbor I got stuck with. Karen was the name, and being a pain was her game. See, I own a nice little farmstead out in the country. 40 acres of land that's been in my family for generations. I grow vegetables, raise some livestock, and sell produce at the farmer's market on weekends. It's honest work, and I enjoy the peace and quiet of country living. That all changed when Miss Karen moved in next door. Right from the start, she made it clear she didn't like my farm being so close to her property. See, Karen was one of those hoity-toity lawyer types who thought cows and chickens had no place in her pristine neighborhood. She'd come marching over in her pantsuit and heels whenever my rooster crowed at dawn, threatening to sue me for noise pollution, and heaven forbid if my cows got loose and wandered near her yard. She'd call the police screaming about how I was letting dangerous animals run wild. I tried reasoning with her, explaining that this was farm country, and she'd have to get used to the sounds and smells that came with it. But there was no talking sense into that woman. She was convinced I was doing it all just to annoy her personally. Things escalated when I decided to build a pond on my property. I thought it would be nice for my ducks and geese, plus provide irrigation for my fields. I got all the necessary permits from the county and had a contractor come out to dig it. Well, Karen about blew a gasket when she saw the construction starting up. She came racing over, waving some legal papers around and shouting that I didn't have permission to alter the natural landscape. I told her to get lost, that it was my land and I could build a pond if I wanted to. Next thing I know, I get served with an injunction from Karen's law firm, trying to stop construction on the pond. Her complaint stated it would obstruct her view and create an eyesore. Plus, she claimed the pond would attract mosquitoes and vermin that would interfere with her enjoyment of her property. I had to hire my own lawyer just to fight her nonsense lawsuit. After months of delays and piles of legal fees, the judge finally ruled in my favor, saying I was completely within my rights to build the pond. Karen was fuming when she lost the case. I reckon she wasn't used to folks standing up to her bullying tactics. But did that stop her? Nope, it only made her angrier and more determined to make my life difficult. Anytime I made improvements to my farm, she found ways to interfere. When I put up a new barn, she complained it was too close to the property line. When I planted an orchard, she whined about how the trees blocked her view. This crazy woman even called the EPA when I spread manure on my fields, claiming I was polluting the environment. Her relentless harassment was wasting my time and money. I tried talking to her nicely, ignoring her, even threatening to get a restraining order. But Karen didn't let up. I realized I was dealing with an unstable, vindictive person, but had no idea how far she would go. That is, until I came home one afternoon to find bulldozers tearing down the fence that marked the boundary with Karen's place. Before I could even react, half my pasture was destroyed, including the field I'd planted for this year's pumpkin crop. I saw Karen standing there in her business suit, leaning on a fence post with a satisfied smirk on her face. When I ran over screaming for her to stop, she pulled out another legal document saying she had a right to clear the land. "This portion is on my property according to the survey," she said smugly. "I'm within my rights to alter the land however I want. Maybe next time you'll think twice before you build ponds without my permission." I saw red. Bad enough she'd been making my life hell for months, but now she was outright destroying my livelihood. I called the sheriff right then and there. Seeing as she'd hired a crew to come bulldoze land she didn't actually own, the cops had no choice but to arrest her for trespassing and destruction of private property. Watching Karen get cuffed and stuffed into the back of the squad car felt like sweet justice after the hell she'd put me through. And the look on her face when they hauled her off to jail? Priceless. For once, she was speechless. At the trial, Karen's lawyer tried arguing that she'd made an honest mistake based on the property survey. Yeah, right. The judge didn't buy her innocent act either. Karen ended up with a misdemeanor conviction, 2 years of probation, and a restraining order prohibiting her from coming near my farm. She also had to pay a huge fine and restitution for the damage and lost income from my destroyed crops. Let's just say her little stunt ended up costing her big time. Losing that case was a major blow to her overinflated ego. She had to sell her place just to cover her losses. Last I heard, she'd moved to the city where she couldn't cause trouble for us simple country folk no more. As for me, the peace and quiet on my farm has never been better. I replaced that fence and planted my pumpkin field again too. My animals and crops are thriving with nosy old Karen far away where she belongs. Sometimes life has a funny way of working out in the end. The next one is a pro-revenge story. So this isn't my story. It happened to a friend of a friend, so exact details are difficult to get, but this is what I was told. For ease of the story and to hide identities, the names I will use are Jack and Jill. A bit of backstory. Jack and Jill had been going out for nearly 5 years at the point of this story. A year prior, Jill lost her job due to the company she worked for being liquidated. Money got tight for Jill, so Jack offered to help by covering her car payments, monthly installment, road tax, insurance, and fuel, so she could put the money she got towards rent and utilities until she got a new job and was financially stable. Jack had a fairly decent job, so it wasn't a strain on his income. A year goes by and Jill is still unemployed, but not due to rejections. She got lazy and spent all day doing nothing around her house while Jack was at work. One day, Jack gets off work early and decides to surprise Jill on the way back home. But as he is approaching her house, he sees another car in her driveway. He parks on the street and sneaks up to the house, looking through the window to see Jill with another man. Jack was pissed, but he didn't burst in there. He walked away, got into his car, and drove off. When Jack got home, he did a little digging and found out who the guy was through Facebook. He discovered that she had been having an affair for half a year with this guy. He was now really pissed off and wanted revenge, and he knew the best way to do it. This is where the revenge comes in. Jill loved her car, even though she barely used it. So what Jack did was stop all the payments that were going out of his bank account and put them onto her account. Since the car was in her name, it was easy to do. As the payments had only just gone out, he had to wait for the end of the month for his revenge to unfold. The end of the month comes and Jill's bank card is declined at the shops. She calls the bank to find out what is going on, and they tell her she has gone overdrawn because of the car payments coming out of her account. Jill phoned Jack and asked why the payment is coming out of her account and not his. Jack coldly replied, "'Cause I know you cheated on me and I'm not going to pay for my ex-girlfriend's car," and hung up. The fallout of the revenge. She tried to get Jack to pay for the car and even got lawsuits involved, but as she was the sole owner of the car, it was declared that he had no legal responsibility to pay for her car. Since she couldn't afford her road tax or insurance, she couldn't drive the car, and eventually she got so far behind in the payments that the car was repossessed. To pay the debt, she had to get a minimum wage job and now takes the bus to and from work. The next one is a petty revenge story. Many years ago, I used to work nights and shared a cubicle workspace with someone who worked during the day. Let's call her Karen. Karen apparently believed that the entire cubicle belonged to her, and that nobody else was allowed to sit there. Everything was labeled with her name, and she would even lock the desk. I had to get a separate file cabinet just so I could store my files and belongings since she wasn't willing to share. She had little knickknacks, figures, placed all over the desk in inconvenient areas, making it difficult for me to work. So I would simply move them to the monitor stand to keep them out of the way. Being short while she was tall, I would adjust the seat, monitor, and phone to make myself comfortable. I hated feeling like a little kid with my feet dangling. Fast forward a few weeks of going through the routine of moving the figures and adjusting the workspace to suit my needs. One day I arrived to find an 11x14 piece of paper taped to the monitor with an aggressive note. "Night person, do not move my stuff. It's not yours to touch. And stop adjusting the seat and monitor because it's not ergonomically correct, blah blah blah." I showed the letter to my manager and demonstrated how the desk was when I arrived, and then after I adjusted it. He laughed and said she was crazy, telling me to continue adjusting it to better suit my needs, and that she could do the same when she came in. And so, the petty revenge began. I started rearranging everything into random configurations on a daily basis for a couple of weeks. One day, I would have the monitor in front of the desk with everything stacked behind it like a pyramid. On another day, I would unplug the phone from its base and put the mouse in its place. I even left the seat upside down. And so on. I recruited my coworkers to join in the fun, and together we would redesign the layout each time. It reminded me of what Jim used to do to Dwight in the office. although we didn't go as far as putting her stapler in Jell-O. Note: removed the special character from Jim in the original text. My friend worked in a cubicle 2 spaces away from Karen, conveniently next to the manager's office, and informed me that Karen would stomp past her every day to complain to the manager about the night person who was destroying her belongings and making it difficult for her to work. Of course, she conveniently left out the fact that she had initiated this whole petty revenge by leaving a note. After about a week of her constant complaining, the manager finally asked if anything was missing or broken. She replied, "Well, no, but..." Fed up with her nonsense, they cut her off and instructed her to readjust things to her needs and to only report to them if anything was vandalized. It was amusing to hear from my friend how agitated Karen was each morning, not knowing what she would find. I never saw another note from Karen, but about a year later, she was assigned to work nights. She told a few of us about the situation, playing the victim, and asked if we had any idea who could have been responsible. The cubicle was empty because I had been promoted and no longer sat at her desk by that time. She must have expected me to be thrown under the bus given the cutthroat nature of the day crew. Little did she know the night crew was ride or die. We all acted clueless and burst into laughter the moment she stepped outside. "No, Karen, the cubicle does not belong to you. Others are allowed to use it and adjust items according to their needs. You're not entitled to it." The next one is a malicious compliance story. When I, F43, was 19, 20 years old, I worked at the local franchise of a popular steakhouse buffet as a cashier and hostess. On our busier days, table turnover could be insane, and me having to help clean a table to seat was a normal thing. Servers bust their own tables. We, of course, would seat tables that were already clean, but sometimes customers would prefer a different location that wasn't. Since it was a buffet, this wasn't a huge problem. We would clean while they filled plates. On one very memorable occasion, this happened to me with a bit of a twist. I took a party to a clean table in Blondie's section. I don't know how old she was, but I would wager early 20s, and she had been there longer than I had. Anyway, when we got there, the head of the party said they would prefer a different table, still in Blondie's section, and indicated one that had not been cleaned yet. I flashed my best customer service smile and said it would not be a problem. They started to turn away, and I prepared to clean the table for them. All of a sudden, Blondie rushed up to me and said that table was unavailable, and would another table be okay instead? I explained the situation and that they had chosen that table specifically, but she was adamant. She explained that she wanted that table and another available to merge for large parties. Tips are almost always better with a large group. I apologized profusely to the current party I was seating and asked if the new table would suffice. They assured me it was all right and took everything in stride as they made their way to the food. The next time Blondie went into the dish area in the kitchen, less than 10 minutes later, I followed her in and proceeded to tear her a new one. It felt really weird to be so thoroughly dressing down anyone older than me. I was raised with old school morals and ideas of respect for those older than me. But she had embarrassed me, and I told her so, and that what she had done made it look like I didn't know how to do my job. She apologized but held her stance. I was still fuming, so I did what anyone with a teenager brain would do. I went to Mom, or rather the head server and her supervisor. I told Mom what she had done and why, and she told me that's fine. If she wants large tables, she can have them. For the next at least 15 to 20 minutes, every large group that came in was seated in her section. Remember, busy day, so this was frequent. She eventually came up to the hostess station to ask me to stop. I told her to talk to Mom. The next one is an entitled people story. This was over 20 years ago. I was invited to a coworker's wedding, and it was a small budget/big energy event. The ceremony was to be held in a garden, and there were going to be more people than seats. The invitation politely asked that the seating be reserved for immediate family and those who might need it more than others. I arrived and met my other coworkers. We were all young and fit then, so standing was no issue for us. We were there early and secured a spot near the front and close to the chairs. The chairs were divided into 2 sections with a path in the middle, and the front row of each section was reserved for the bride and groom's family. The rest of the chairs were up for grabs. A couple arrived, both in their late 20s, and took the seats at the end of the row behind the bride's family row, just near us. The man of the couple did not look well, and he had no hair. A few people made their way over to say hello to him. He smiled as he talked and seemed happy to be there. The chairs filled up quickly with older attendees, and those who arrived later took standing positions at the sides like us. I checked my watch and the start time was not far away. A few minutes later, I saw a young woman walk in. She was in her early 20s and walked close to the chairs, looking around as if she was searching for someone. She made her way up near us, then tapped the unwell man on the shoulder. I thought she might have known him until I heard her say, "Excuse me, can I have that seat?" He looked at her as if he didn't understand, so she helped him by repeating, "Can I have that seat?" "Why?" he asked, and I had the same question. "Because you're a man and I'm a woman. You should be a gentleman and offer me that seat." Suddenly, every conversation nearby stopped. People turned and looked. The bride's family in the front row must have known this man, and they all turned around. A few of them stood up and seemed about to interject when the man's partner leaned in front of him and said loudly, "He has cancer and he needs to sit down, okay?" The young woman looked around and realized that she had attracted a lot of attention. "How was I supposed to know?" she protested, and then quickly walked away, disappearing into the crowd behind the chairs. End note. The wedding went well after that. I spoke to my coworker when he returned from his honeymoon, and the man turned out to be his wife's cousin. The young woman was his wife's coworker, but they were not close. Over the following years, I learned that the man ended up beating cancer and became a father. I do not know what happened to the young woman because I never asked. The next one is an entitled parent story. This isn't my first post on here. I am a 23-year-old nanny and have posted entitled parent stories from that job, but I also hold another position as a cashier at night weekends, and I finally have one from this job, so I work as a cashier at a 24-hour grocery store. This particular store, while we do technically have a corporate office and are a chain in a way, is privately owned, and the employees are considered the owners because we invest part of our pay into the company. While we have management and supervisors, we are given broad discretion with denying service and throwing people out. Basically, if you have a good reason and they can see it in our cameras, there is a good reason we are good to go. Okay, now for the story. It was a busy Saturday afternoon just a few days ago, and we were packed to the point the lines are wrapped around aisles. So it is loud, busy, packed, and hot. I'm tired and see it's only about 30 minutes till my shift ends. And I'm trying to keep up my nice smile and customer service voice. Briefly to my side, I hear a kid yell. He looks about 3-ish. Not like a tantrum, but like just angry, trying to get mom's attention. I ignore him because kids having tantrums or getting angry is normal. I start talking to the lady in front of me and I hear the kid, who, by the way, was actually quite sweet. He yells again for Mom. "Mom, I want my juice." Now he was yelling, but it was nowhere close to a tantrum or a fit. His family was the next in line. Frankly, if he'd been in a different line, I probably wouldn't have noticed at all. In my opinion, he was more like getting Mom's attention. And his mom, entitled Mom, just snaps. She turns around, grabs him by his shoulders, goes nose to nose, and screams as she shakes him back and forth. "You will not behave like this, you brat! I'm so tired of this. If you do not stop, you will get a beating when we get home." Now I was shocked, and so was everyone around. She did not say punishment or even spanking. She said beating. Now I was about to tell the lady in front of me to excuse me while I talked to the mother, but she jumped in so fast. She went up to the EM and said, "How dare you talk to your son like that? He is a child and you should never put your hands on him or threaten to. Then embarrass him in front of everyone." I was proud this lady said something, but I was still going to ADI paged for a manager in the process because I had a feeling this would go bad. EM starts yelling back. She has the right to do whatever she wants to her son. She could spank, beat, and yell as she sees fit. Now I jump on verbally. "Ma'am, I need you to take yourself and leave the store. Your children and husband, who, by the way, did nothing during this, can check out, but you need to leave." "Excuse me," she yelled. "You need to leave. We do not tolerate abusive children or other customers. You have done both by screaming at this woman." I turned to the other woman. As much as I didn't want to, I had to say, "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but let us handle this." She wasn't mad. She stepped away to bag her things. I turned back to the mom and she is losing it. "You can't do that. I have the right to shop here. I demand to see a manager, blah blah blah. I swear she reaches a pitch only dogs could hear. At this point, my awesome manager shows up. Hey OP, what's going on? Before I can speak, EM speaks up. This idiot won't let me check out because she doesn't like how I discipline my child. That's not true, manager. What happened was... Before I could finish, he spoke up. Ma'am, we do not tolerate any kind of name-calling in our store, and I need you to be quiet so I can hear from both of you. He turns to me. I then rattle off the story and his eyes widen. Mind you again, it's a busy day, and other customers are around listening, and about 3 or 4 people jump in to defend me, which thankfully my manager listened to. He turns to the lady and her family. Ma'am, I need you to leave this store. Your family can finish checking out, but you need to leave. If you don't, I'll call the police. Frankly, you'll be lucky if I don't do that anyway with the threats you made. She tries to stand up for herself, but my manager just escorts her out. The family just follows after her, without their food. You'd think this was the end, but nope. About 15-ish minutes later, after I fill out a report with my manager explaining everything, I head outside to get in my car and head home. I'm on the phone with a friend, trying to explain what happened with the lady. But as I walk outside, I see a police car outside. No lights, just parked. I thought it was weird because I didn't see anyone get caught shoplifting that day, so I shrug and move on. As I reach my car, I hear it. That's the girl, officer! She's the one who assaulted me and refused to let me shop here. I turn and see the woman from earlier with her kids and husband with 2 cops. I couldn't help it. I laugh. Are you serious, lady? My friend is trying to talk to me, but the officer just says, Ma'am, can you come here so I can get your side and settle this? I tell my friend I'll call her back and go talk to the officer. He keeps me away from the EM, but I can still see and hear her. I briefly explain what happened. I told him I believed what she was doing to her son was abusive and that it was not okay. The cop asked for specifics, and I tell him what I saw and heard her threaten, but before the cop can say anything, the EM yells, I'm his mother. I can discipline as I see fit. I can beat him if I want. Again, I'm wide-eyed with her wording, still using beating, not spanking, and the cop looks just as shocked. If you'd like, my manager is inside. His name is his name, and he can show you the cameras, and this store actually has microphones so you can hear what she says. I admit that I refused service and called her abusive, but that's it. I never touched her. EM still yelling. See? She admits to verbally assaulting me and refusing me service because of who I am. Arrest her. The cop sighs, looks at his partner, and nods. He looks at me and says, okay, you can go. I'm going to give you thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.